This is the Power of OZmosis Podcast, powered by the vidwheel Creator Network. Hi, everyone. This is the Power of OZmosis video podcast, powered by vidwheel Creator Network. Today is part 3 of a 3-part series. So the culminating part of this podcast with none other than John Bourdage. John, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. It's great to be here, John.
Great to have you back. It's been a fun journey, a cadence, if you will, unpacking all things social intelligence, right? Arming our audiences with the tools that they need, the tools, the tips, the tricks, into becoming their very own version of a social operative, social intelligence operative, forgive me. And so we're going to jump right into it. This is another how-to, of course, and featuring none other than the thought leadership expert himself on networking. I'm going to refer to my notes here. We've covered 2 different areas specifically of social intelligence and networking. So the first one in our first podcast, which is about, I think we released that in May of this year, that was force multiplication, effective communication, and really how to leverage the art of listening to accelerate your growth. The last one we did, which was released in June, was the strategies of networking, the process of networking, and then tools of conversation within networking. Now, today, we're going to be talking about 3 things once again, and that will be tips for networking generally, broadly, 30,000-foot view. Then we're going to go a little further, and we're going to talk about how to network a room. And then lastly, a buzz phrase, words out there that I know people are excited about. They're trying to get more of is social capital. What are we building? What is social capital, and how do we accrue more? So, John, my friend, let's talk about networking generally speaking.
Okay, let's talk about some of the tips. The first thing I always say to people is understand when you're out there, the 4 types of connections or people you're going to run into. Number 1 is the connector. Connector is a person who knows a lot of people. They become a conduit for you to meet other people. So I always say it's very important to have those connectors because there are those certain people like yourself that basically know a lot of people. So why would I want you in my network? Well, one of the main reasons is because you know so many people and you can connect me to so many people. I call those the connectors. Next one is a prospect. This is what most people think about when they think about networking. A prospect is a person I can sell my goods or services to. I'm trying to turn them into a client. All right. Mm-hmm. Most people focus on just the prospect. All right, that's why I want to give them the 4. The next one is really, really important. It's the asset. You want an asset. What is an asset? That's a person who has goods or services that can support what you do. Let me give you a quick example. Let's say I'm a salesman and I do a lot of selling and I do a lot of meetings in restaurants. And I go to a great restaurant and I said, you know what, this restaurant, I want in my restaurant library. I want to bring clients in. So the manager or the maitre d' would become that asset for me. These are people, again, goods, services, or skills that can support what I do. The last one I always say you're going to run into at networking events is the dud. The dud is basically that person you won't want to spend a lot of time with. They're not proactive. They just came there because they had nothing else to do. They're not really engaged. You're going to meet a few of those people.
Booze, right, John? Sorry to interrupt.
Correct. That's basically what it is. They came to check out the bar and the buffet. That's about it. That one, like I said, the largest word in the word networking is work, and you need to work that room. So those people I'm not going to give really a lot of time to. Let's take another concept. I always say too, when you're dealing with people, another tip is find out what motivates people. What do they love in their life, their work? Do you have something in common that you're passionate about? It could be cigars, wine, travel, cars, whatever that is. All right. If you can connect yourself with what motivates people, whether it's in business or just personal connection to develop that relationship, you're going to get what master networkers call blue flame. All right. I always say find out what that person's really passionate, energetic about. Next one is, this is the big one. All right. This is the double stars now. Bring something to the table. You know, people connect. Why does someone want to connect with me? Because I bring certain things to the table. Here's something that I learned in politics. Power brokers are not necessarily powerful themselves, but they make themselves indispensable, and that's what gives them power. All right. They become indispensable. Those are those type of people. They're the go-to person all the time that you go to for things that you need because they're connected. I remember this. This is something I remember a political strategist that I worked with. He says, it was so funny. He says, politicians come and go, but the power brokers stay. All right. Because they've made themselves indispensable. They bring that value to the table, so much value to the table that you need them there. Next one is, and it runs along those lines, is if I want to get a relationship going, I want to follow the give to get principle. So I look at a person, I'm going to say, how can I give them some of my time, talent, connections, use some of that to help them out to get this relationship moving, to develop this reciprocal circle. But I want to be proactive in doing that. So it's give to get. Most people look at it and they go, hey, what could that person do for me? That's always the mistake. I always want to see what I can do for that person. Remember, in the beginning, when you're developing, it's always about them. How can I service them? How can I become that power broker, that indispensable person? All right. And that's actually, as we've talked before, how people build influence. All right. The other one I always say to people, listen, when you're in a room, do not be confrontational. All right. This is not the Lincoln Douglas debate. You're trying to pull people in. You're trying to work with people. Don't be confrontational. Don't be judgmental. Nothing puts someone off more. Do not put people down. All right. All of this destroys connection. If you're that type of person that always has to have the last word, forget it. You're never going to be a good networker. Here's another big one. And this one is another double star for anyone listening. Surround yourself with people who have strengths and skills where you do not. This is something master networkers do. It shores up your weaknesses. This is what master networkers and real great leaders do. All right. It's a skill. I want to bring people in that I don't have those skills. Why? Because now I don't have to worry. I always say to young people, I go into colleges, I'll go into schools of business. There's a lot of ambitious young people. And I'll always say to them, I don't never worry about being the smartest guy in the room. And they look at me, what are you talking about? Because I said, if I have the biggest, best network and I've done this principle, I am the smartest guy in the room. Because I can literally pick up a phone and call someone who has years. There's a gentleman, his name is Dan. He's in my network. He's been in law. He's been a judge and a lawyer for probably 47 years. If I have any question on anything in law, I'm going to call him up. I'm not going to waste my time. Yeah, absolutely. Invaluable. Next one is when you're out, when in group, find that one friendly person within a group or an organization, and that becomes your opening. That's like, I always talk to you about the water principle. Water, that little drop of water can just move in. I'm looking for that friendly person. They bring me into the group. The next thing I'm looking for once I move into the group is that person of influence within a group. Okay. Who's that person of influence within that group or the organization? If I find that person, I'll get to know that person. Then I have them introduce me around. Because when they do that, they know all these people, they can introduce them. It makes it much easier to get to know them. And number two, the big one is I get a rub from their influence. All right. Because I had that influential person introduce me. Really neat little trick, but it works very, very well. Then I always say to people, understand something. This is really important. A networking tip is if you look around your network and everyone looks like you, I always say you don't have a network, you've got an anthill. The power of the network comes in its diversity. People with different expertise, different backgrounds in life, all of that. I want as many perspectives as possible. And this is another master tip, not only for networking, but strategizing. Master strategists, what they'll do is they talk to different people, get different perspectives. Because here's the problem. I'm one human being. My perspective is limited. But if I have those conversations with good people from diverse backgrounds, I get a much larger scope in view than to build my strategies from. That's a really big one. All right. If I can take that time and do that. The other one I always say to people too is you built your network. All right. You've gone through all of this. Have something what I call network security. Network security is there are a lot of people that will come to me and ask to be connected from one person to another person. But understand, do I really want to do this? And the reason is if that connection goes wrong, and I've had this happen before, it looks bad on both ends, but mainly on yours because you've brought that in. And there are many times where people will ask, hey, listen, you know this person on a very, very high level. I want to be introduced because I have an idea, but you don't really have a plan. You don't really have finance. You don't really have something together for me to take you into that level. All right. So you've really got to have to discern, because you've spent years building your network, building your credibility, building your brand, building your influence. All of that you have to be careful about. It's just something to always kind of keep in mind. There's a lot of good connections I've made. And if you make those good connections and use some discernment when you do it, that always adds to your brand and your influence and your reputation as well. But you have to use good judgment when you do that. I always want to make that. The other one is, I always say to people, listen, practice makes perfect. All right. Practice makes perfect. This is a game. Understand that networking is a time and persistence concept. All right. As I've said many times before, the largest word in networking is work. It takes time, that persistence to it. That's how you build a great network. It's not going to happen overnight. It never does. And if you are, like we've talked about, that cultivator, you'll understand that principle. But anyone who's had a tremendous network, how many years have you been networking? I'll just send that one to you. How many years would you say you've been networking?
I mean, including internships, John, and I just want to sidebar. I'll answer your question. I'm sitting here because of networking. I'm sitting as a friend of yours, as a mentee of yours, as a collaborator of yours, because of networking. And that was, so to answer your question, they're kind of the same. When we met, it was at least 12, probably close to 12 years ago. So I would say probably right around that time is when because when you're in college, you network, even before college, you should be networking. Really networking is, like you said, it's amassing folks in your role at Exit. You build relationships laden with trust, rapport, value, friendship too, a lot of times. And so I'd say about 12 years maybe. And you're right on. And then I know we're probably going to get there, but there's 3 different things. And I learned this from you, and I've maybe iterated it. Bruce lead it a little, made it my own, right? Build is step 1. Everyone wants to do that. And yes, it takes forever. It takes a long time to do it properly. 2, it's to maintain it, right? And we can get into that. Maybe you mentioned a lawyer. If you didn't maintain a friendship with him, a relationship, you can't call him up after 2 years of silence. Doesn't happen. And I remember you a year ago you unearthed that to me, and that was a game changer. And then 3rd is the optimize. Is how do I go to John Bourdage and say, John, so-and-so who's friends with one of your immediates, who's not necessarily a friend of yours, but you're willing, because of our, again, friendship, relationship laden with trust and value and rapport and all of that, you're willing to go out. And going back to that other example where, you got to be careful of getting burned. I've done it. I can count on my hands. I've made a lot of connections. I can count on one hand how many times it's happened to me. I'll never forget it. And that person will never get a connection from me again. So just to bring it full circle.
And, and I talk about that to people. There's a certain etiquette and certain respect that you have to give. I'll give an example. Someone called me about a year or so ago. We're looking for someone really good who was in the hospitality industry. I knew someone who was in the private club scene and sent them over, and they never, ever called them. Okay. So that's that idea. I'm not going to do that anymore. All right. The etiquette of is that if someone is putting that out, that capital out to connect you, you have an obligation to make that connection. Okay. Even if you didn't want them for the position, you should have they should have called and talked and all of that. That's understanding it. But going back to that, I first learned this heavy about networking when I studied to be a butler in England. And what really brought it to light for me is I had to do concierge training. And you notice the top concierge, they live by their book. They live by those connections, and they can sell them. They can go to any property, any 5-star high-end hotel, and just sell that book and their service to them.
Plug and play, right, John? Plug and play. They can leave one 5-star, go to another, and take their folks with them.
And they can make amazing things happen because of what that connection, that book that they've built.
And the acceleration of that. I wanted to flip back here briefly too to here's another how-to, just a quick what I would consider a gold nugget as the Connectee, right? So we're talking about how there's 4 different styles of person, but say you're on the receiving end of the connection, right? The one thing that, again, you and I, we both are connectors of sorts, and the one thing that doesn't happen a lot in my world. So anyone watching this and they're like, "Oh, John connected me to like 3 people and I never did this." It's okay. Yeah, a lot going on. But if you want to stand out as a Connectee, give a little update. Give a little update to the connector, right? So I make a connection for you, John, to Sally. And you talk to Sally and cool things are happening. You come back to John, come back to me and say, hey, John, just an update. What an awesome connection. Thank you again to Sally. We're going to collaborate on this project and this is what's happening. Thanks again. Instead of me having to follow up as the connector, which sometimes I'm curious, especially if it could be something really fruitful and something that can be very impactful, I'm curious to know. So if you want to stand out as the connectee, a little something could be just a couple of words. Thanks again. We're doing this. We're meeting here. We're doing that. Good. So there's just a networking tip there on the flip.
Yeah, that's what I tell them is close the circle. It's just using a little bit of that respect, close the circle, let them know what was happening. And that was the other problem with that person. They never closed the circle. And I actually had to call my contact back that I was sent over and said, hey, did you ever hear anything? And he said, no.
And then you're directly interfacing with this person. It's embarrassing for you.
It just shows that it was a serious lack of understanding of respect and the etiquette of how this is done. All right.
And that's it.
It was a lack of professionalism on that end, but it's not going to happen again because there again, it's done. Okay.
And that's why, as the connector, like you said, it might be worth developing again for our millions of watchers and listeners. I had to fit that in there. Law of attraction. It might be worth having almost like a criteria base, right? So like for me with like saying yes or no to opportunities, connections, intros, whatever it may be, I've gotten better and still work in progress. John, I've come to you with this, the cut, right? The cut, the art of cut, not to do to-do list. And so it's like three things. Like if I'm going to say yes to this opportunity, it has to check this box, and this box. So when you're making the connection, maybe for our watchers and listeners, you can have a similar kind of cadence where it's like, if I'm going to make this connection for this person to this or company to company, these three things have to happen, right? Oh, I know this person well. I know them and I trust them in my life, whatever it is, just making examples in order to mitigate the risk of having one of these happenings, which John, you've had happen to you a couple of times, same for me. No one ever wants to be on that because then it creates more work, right? You're trying to do some good. And then
now you have to repair the damage that's done. Okay, so you're going to have to go back and repair the damage that's done. Yeah. It happens. Let's put it this way. Let's be honest. It happens to everyone. But I like your idea of if you have those set criteria, you're looking at it and you can judge that, much more accurately if you want to make that move, you want to make that connection or not.
Again, people like us, you're out there, you're doing work you've been doing, especially John, for you've got such a sterling, career storyline. I mean, I can only imagine the amount of inquiries you get. And actually, maybe on the flip side, again, creatively coming up with ways to say no thanks. It's not something I just can't do right now, or I don't know the person, because this happens on LinkedIn for me. Again, let's weave quickly in LinkedIn, and then we're going to move to networking the room, our point two. But I have however many 14,000 followers, and a lot of those people I don't know. They just have followed me through my journey on LinkedIn for the last 12 years, and so oftentimes I'll get the email that says, or the connection, the message saying, hey, John, I see so-and-so, can you connect me? Now, I will caveat it by saying this: with COVID, the pandemic, everything that's happened, I firmly believe that there's never been a more important time for human connectivity, right? So I like to get creative, and I actually like to kind of say, you know what? I'm going to take that challenge on. I'm going to find a way to creatively connect, Joe to Steve, even though I don't really know Steve. But what I can do is I can do my research. I can go see, who do I know that's a first name basis connection in my network, right? My actual network, LinkedIn network, whatever. So it's like, I could reach out to Joe on behalf of, or Steve on behalf of Joe, and say, hey, I see we know the same people. My pal reached out to me. This is kind of that optimized piece we talked earlier, John. And I never, there's never been a time for this. Kind of put some candor, some emotion almost, and then make the connection, see what happens. And this has happened to me, John. And I'm telling you, I'm probably batting 80% on an actual conversation happening, but I make it known that I don't really know, the other party. So I think that was a lot of moving parts. The point is, someone reaches out to me, hey, John, I see you're connected at first level on LinkedIn out of 14,000 people. I don't really know them, but I have mutual connections who I know well. And I'm assuming then that this person is a person of value, whatever quality. I then go into the message intentionally saying, hey, I know I don't know you, but this is a friend of mine who wants to talk to you. We know the same people. Would you entertain a 15-minute connect chat? And that's something that's also differentiated me in my growth as a business person, because I don't know if a lot of people are doing that. I don't want to blanket statement that, but people that have come back say, John, I really appreciate that creative effort, because now I've built rapport with the connection seeker, right? Absolutely. To the person I don't even know. So again, a lot of movement there, but hopefully someone followed that in my tangent.
Well, you've asked that person, that permission, would you be interested? If they're not, then you can go back to the person who made the inquiry and said, right at this point, they're not, interested in doing that. So, that's a good way to do it. You're kind of looking at both ends of it. But because our time, let's get back
to the room.
Let's get tips for working a room. Okay, the first one is, what's the best time to network a room? The cocktail reception. Okay, if you're going to organizational functions, cocktail reception, for two reasons. One, you have the most mobility. All right, in that cocktail hour, everyone's up and moving. I've got the most mobility. There's another reason, the old saying that I love, that when a little wine goes in, a little truth comes out. When people are having a cocktail, they want to talk. All right. As the function goes on and you go into the dinner part of the program, you can still network at the table. But I learned this many years ago in politics, a really top, master politicians or master statesmen, if they have to move to several functions, they're always making it there at the cocktail hour, because then they can move. All right, it gives them what areas of the room, the bar, the buffet, reception. This is where you're going to have the most grouping of people in those areas. That's where you want to network. Keep in mind, though, it is quality, not quantity. If I go into the room and I make 1 to 3 good contacts, I am there. Okay, I want to build the relationship. I want to plant that seed and be able to develop it. The other one I always say is focus on your contact. Focus in on what they're talking about. Understand that person that you're dealing with. Know their worldview. I want to know how I can craft my message to connect to them, so I'm listening. And I also want to know what the social capital is there. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Or I say the networking capital, what that person is into. I go, oh, okay. Next is be well rested when you're in a room. When you get in those rooms, be well rested. Be ready. Okay. Have your elevator pitched down and polished before you enter the room. This goes to the 12 by 12 by 12. So that last 12 is what are the first 12 words that come out of your mouth. The other one with being well rested, how do you look at 12 feet? How do you look at 12 inches? Are you focused? Are you on? So that one's important. I always say to people too, look for those open configurations. Okay. That's those people that are standing almost in a horseshoe shape where I can walk up and then I can kind of get into a conversation with them. Here's a big one. Here's a big, big, big one. Never, ever be caught without a business card. You have no idea how many functions that I've been at where someone doesn't have a card, or they brought 2 cards in a room of 300 people. All right. I want to make sure that I have my cards with me at all times. I always say to people, listen, there's only one time of the day I don't have a card on me. It's when I'm in the shower. Okay. I have cards with me in my binders, my planner, my portfolio, my bag. Everything has a card, because you never know when you're going to run into that contact. Here's the other one. Always exchange a business card. If I'm in front of that person, I want to turn them into a contact, work on developing them, developing that asset. I'm going to make sure that I get my card to them and I get their card. How do I do this? As we build a rapport, after it's built, a little bit of time, conversation, I'll ask them for their card. When they go for their card, I'll take out mine and do the exchange. Set something up. I love the culture that we're in today, because it's a coffee culture. I can do a power 15, 20 minutes. I don't have to do an hour lunch until I build a relationship into that. So I'm going to do that. Let's say I want to get on their calendar. Let's say I call them and said, listen, John, I'm running a big project. I can't get on the calendar. Okay. We can't talk until 2 months out. That's what I pull out my calendar. Boom. Okay. 2 months from now, I'll give them another call. We'll set something up. Mm-hmm. Here's a big one too. Network first, hit the bar and buffet later. In a cocktail hour, I'm going to do a half hour of solid networking. Then I'll grab a drink, put the drink in my left hand, not in my right hand, because I don't want to get my right hand all wet and cold. Okay. And then I'll still network. And if I have a little something off the hors d'oeuvre buffet, I'll do it maybe the last 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. That cocktail hour, I'm focused on my networking. The other one I always tell people, if you're having a cocktail, having, like hors d'oeuvres. First one is avoid eating cumbersome and difficult foods. And the other one we're going to talk about is drinking excessive alcohol. Let's take the first one. Okay. This is, as I said to you before, this is buffalo. All right. On every buffet, what do you have? You got chicken wings. Now, is that something I want to be doing, is dipping the blue cheese dress and have that all over my hands and try to network? No. But I always warn people too, if you're going to high-end events, watch it. Crab claws is nothing more than a chicken wing and a tuxedo. That's all that is. All right. I still have the same problem. I've got that claw. I'm dunking it in sauce. It's fancy, but it's a pain. I want things on toothpick skewers, easy to eat. Alcohol. This is a big one. You want to have a few cocktails, but know your limit. And your limit, as I've said to you before, is not when you have a really good buzz on, but you can still find your way to the door. You got to be focused because you're networking. If I come up to you and like at 12, remember we're at 12 feet, then I go to 12 inches and you can't track me with your eyes, or you smell like a Seagram's distillery, okay, I'm moving on with it.
God, that's good.
The other one I say with the tips, make sure your clothing and appearance are appropriate for your networking environment. This is really important. If I'm ever not sure, it's always better to be a little overdressed than underdressed, because the first 12 is, how do you look at 12 feet? That's the first judgment that someone's going to come in. Do I want to spend time with this person? Do they look like a professional? And I think the last tip in the room is, remember, networking is a way of life. Okay. Whenever I have people around me I don't know, it's a networking opportunity. All right. It's just not a 9-to-5 or a business. I'm in this business framework. It's a life framework. So anytime I have an opportunity, one, if I don't know someone, I want to know them. Number two, if I do know someone, I want to develop that relationship. So networking is a constant thing. I have another breathing human being around me. It's a networking opportunity.
Very good. That's so well done. Oh my God. I love the 12 rule, the 12s there. Couple of quick rapid fire questions. We move to capital after.
Yes.
I'm a non-drinker. What do you, I know the answer because I know what I do, but I want to hear from the expert himself. What do you recommend to non-drinkers at these events? Because alcohol is pretty much at all.
Okay. So, personally, this is, I'm a wine guy, so I'm not really hard liquor. I'm almost 6'3", and I weigh probably 225. I'll have 2 glasses of wine and I'm done, but I will not stop drinking. Generally, what I like is tonic water with a piece of lime.
If you like my go-to.
Yeah, tonic water with a piece of lime.
Looks like it's soda water or vodka water, whatever the heck.
It could be. It looks like a cocktail. Okay,
right.
So it's kind of blended in. I like it because for me, it's refreshing. All right, It keeps the vocal cords lubricated and you're talking. Fantastic. Hey, listen, I knew one of the best networkers and a guy that he knew everyone in politics. This guy bought a lot of cocktails and talked to a lot of people who drank nothing but ginger ale with lemon or lime in it. That's all he ever drank.
Good there too, right? When you're sick to drink ginger ale.
And this gentleman knew a lot of information, let's put it that way, because he got people talking by having cocktails, but he never really drank. As long as you have a drink in your hand, have the bartender, garnish it up a little bit, make it look like, I'll have something with a piece of fruit, whatever it is. You could do orange juice. You could do just tomato juice, like what they call the virgin drinks, that don't have any alcohol in them. You're not obligated to drink alcohol. That's not obligation. The drinking part of it is, I have that in my hand. I can drink, I can be sociable, but what's in that glass? If you really wanted to, you could have milk in that glass
I'll try that sometime. My next event.
Try a little bit of milk in that. And tell them it's a premier milk from Jersey cows. It's something at high end. You may start a trend.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's so good. You just made me think of one other thing. So a couple more. Thanks for that. So the business card thing, right? So this is part of our collaboration where, I haven't seen as much of the movie of life as you have. So when you say the business card, my mind defaults, without being challenging or confrontational, but my mind defaults to, well, if you pull out the phone, and LinkedIn has a really cool thing. And I've talked about this in my coaching sessions, speaking events, where you can pull out the QR code, right? So you have a digital thing. Again, I love the tangible. It's there, you have it. You're not going to be forgotten. They can put it on their desk. So I'm all the way with you there. But in case people don't want to do it, don't have it. Like I honestly, candidly don't have business cards because I guess in a way it's because of my network. And I'm also more selective where I'm going and who I'm dealing with. So, but though for the folks that are the aspiring network is yes, business card. But if not, you pull out the phone and you can use LinkedIn as just something for our millions of listeners and watchers. Now, one thing based on that, my curiosity, that was more of a point. Feel free to respond to that. But I wanted to ask you with the phone topic, what happens when someone who comes in, because I see it at all the events I'm at. You walk into a room, you're by yourself, it's a networking thing, whatever. I see it too often. You don't know anyone. What do you default to?
Yeah, on your phone. Go there. Okay.
What do you do? So, John, what do you do when you don't know anyone? That's my question, sir.
Basically, you look for the open configuration. You walk in, you wait for your moment, and you introduce yourself into the ring and you start talking. That's what the concept of the open configuration is. I'm going to walk up there. I'm 3 to 4 feet away. We're at a networking event. I'm not just standing there because I have nothing better to do. I wait till someone's done, wait for the lull in the conversation and say hello, and then introduce myself, John Bourdage, and then get into the conversation. All right.
Great point. And that's a great, sorry to interrupt you, John. It's a great point. And in my mind, too, additive to what you said, pulling out what you said earlier in the chat, the person, maybe they, and this is something I do, so I'm sharing it with what I do. I will scope the place out. Okay. I'll go see, where's the bar? Where's the food? What kind of, who are the sponsors? Maybe, and for me, without sounding like I'm bragging, like, who do I recognize, familiar, do I know? But I'm still scoping it out regardless whether I know or don't. Maybe go to the bathroom. How do I look? Wash the hands, get dialed in, kind of maybe take a second to breathe, because you're going to go into the fire maybe a little bit, depending on your level of anxiety or feelings on these types of events. So I guess just too curiously, like, what do you think of that? And then I just have one more question about what happens if you encounter a dud. But what do you think about that, mapping the place out? And then we move to my question on the dud.
Do this. I love it because I do it all the time. I always say I'm going to recon the area because I want to know where the bar is. I want to know where the buffet is. I want to know where those high density areas are going to be, the layout of the room. It also gives me that opportunity to see the crowd in the room, get a feeling of it. If I see a person I know, that becomes my opening point. So when I'm going to network, I'm going to go with them. And it goes back to, if they're part of the organization, hey, and then they can start introducing me around. So it's another way that I can pull myself in and around. One thing I want to go back to real quick is the business card concept. Having a business card, if I see someone, listen, people at the very higher rungs, CEOs and the rest, they may not be as tech advanced. Here's one thing about a paper card: I can hand it to anybody, whether they have a phone or have nothing with them, whatever. It never, you know what I mean? It goes everywhere. And I may use it in other ways. I may flip it over and, write a little note on the back of it. I can also use that to slide over and say with the group, if we want to pull away later and do a little after cocktail at another place, use it as a little bit of an invite. So there's a lot of ways you can use it. I am not opposed to this technology. I think that's fantastic, but don't ever underestimate the paper card, because there's a lot that you can do with it.
The traditional, I love it. It's that mixture. It's to know your audience, right? And even back to the beginning of what you were saying too, when you say come with something to offer, okay, here we go. We might have an unlock moment here, John. I know we're a little over time, but like you said, let's finish when the job's done, but we'll be quick. So come with something of value. All right. So say you're worrying, because again, the networking is something that I think a lot of folks, because they're unaware of it, they have to put themselves out there, whatever it may be. That's why folks like you and I exist, John, is to help folks understand that networking is actually really cool. It's great, but you have to empower yourself first to have your awareness on how to go in there and really be successful, be efficient. So the point I'm getting at is, you started this conversation with come with value. Now, if you're worried about your value, right? So okay, well, what am I really going to say? What am I going to really offer? Well, I don't know. I just don't know. How's this? You get there, you don't know anyone, or it's quiet. You go around, scope the place out. Scope the place out. What kind of food? What kind of beer? Who's sponsoring? What game's on the TV? And then you come in and you say, like, you still don't know anyone, but you got that opening, John, right? You got that water can let in. You come in and say, hey, do you see that amazing ice sculpture, that sponsor? Boom. There goes the ice, if you will, right? And so I got goosebumps. So maybe that's something people can think about too. Well, if I don't go and if I go somewhere and I don't know someone, or I don't know what I'm going to offer, well, you can just go scope the place out and then find something you might use as conversation starter.
And we've talked about that before. We were talking about conversation being a master of small talk. So I'm going to start off with that little item, and then I build. And then some things that they're talking to me about, those threads they give to me, I can pull on any one of them and build from that point. And understand, people are always going like, what's my power? What am I adding in? Or what am I giving? Listen, in this first initial meetings, you're just sowing the seeds. You're planting seeds that you grow into something. So it's all that's kind of step process to it, but that's a great idea is you can use any small piece. Listen, how many times I have been in a room and a very high-end affairs, and I remember sitting next to a woman, it was a black tie affair. She had a most amazing jewelry. Now, my brother is a custom jeweler, and all of a sudden I looked down and she had an incredible piece, this ring, which was beautiful. And I commented, what a beautiful piece of jewelry. That is really, it was a work of art. And that's how we got started. So I can make little observations like that and turn those into conversation.
So good. Thank you, John. I'll skip the one last thing and let's move to social capital. What is it? How do we get more of it?
Okay, let's talk about social capital. So social capital, if you define it, social capital are resources that are acquired through social interaction. It's non-monetary. It does not deal with money. Okay, so let's talk about some of the elements, all right, that I get. Do you remember we were talking information and intelligence? Just by having those conversations with someone in the know, that's a form of capital, all right? Personal expertise and knowledge, like I was talking about my friend Dan, okay? Just what Dan could give me just in just a casual conversation because of his years and years of experience is a form of capital. Ideas, brainstorming. How many times have you and I just sat and talked and brainstormed? Brainstorming is social capital. That's a form of capital. Life experience. Listen, I have a mentor. Everyone should have mentors. Listen, they can give you information that can take years of legwork off of you. That's social capital. Okay. Opportunities. Listen, if I have contacts, that's the other one. Let's take it this way. So if you're a conduit and you have a lot of contacts and you tap me into contacts, more contacts, that's a form of capital because with more contacts come referrals, comes opportunities. Those are forms of capital. Here's a big one, access. You can't be a player if you're not in the room. Access is a form of capital. Your reputation, your personal brand is a form of capital because that builds influence. You increase your spheres of influence through your reputation by building it over time. Trust is another one. That's a big one too. Trust is a form of capital with it. So you've got a lot of people never think about these elements. All those elements I can use, like you were talking about, in influence, all right, to move things. There's many times I've been able to move things and be a part of things that it never cost me a dime because of building that social capital. All right, so let's talk about building. How do you build? Well, you got to know and network with everyone. It's one of those principles. You multiply your capital, you force multiply. Remember, I talk about force multiplication. We'll get back to that in the future with some future talks. This is how I do it. I know people, I multiply my force by multiplying the people. The other one is when I develop those connections, I build them into relationships, I build them into friendships. All right. I'm building that confidence in people. I'm building that trust, that influence with people. When I say I'm going to do something, I do it. I have the context so I can deliver. I give to get. That begins to build. Here's another big one is goodwill and good deeds. You know, do that giving to get, that setting out there. Listen, I'm willing to be generous. I'm willing to not guard this piece of pie. I'm willing to make more pie with you as a group. We can do this. You know, that's building capital. Then once you build it and accumulate it, then when you need, you spend it. Listen, I want to be there. I've told you that story about the gentleman I knew. He worked for a very influential congressman down in Washington, D.C. So it was it was Bill Clinton's second inaugural. And he said to me, hey, why don't you come down? A group of us are getting together and we're just going to have some fun. So I went down and I went into his office, and this gentleman and I had worked together for years. I went in the office, we're talking. He's, hey, I got a little something for you. He slides this package across the desk to me, and it is the congressional package from the White House. He says, my congressman is going to be out of town. He says, have fun. I opened it up. I had tickets to the inaugural ball. I had tickets to, what was that? My seating was for the president, for when they do the run down Pennsylvania Avenue. I sat in front of the White House. So for the inauguration, I walked up, and a young Marine who was dressed, he looked fantastic. He was dressed in full coat uniform down to his ankles. He says, excuse me, sir, let me see your ticket. He says, allow me to escort you to your seat. There were only 3 rows in front of me, and then there was Bill Clinton, and 2 rows ahead of me were Kevin Costner and Barbara Streisand. Okay. And I was sitting in with all the congressmen and senators, their family. All right. They were sitting up next to the president. I was there. All right. Did not cost me a dime monetarily, but that's where social capital can put you.
You deposited all that effort to build that social capital
and build that capital, and those opportunities come. And that was social capital. I mean, literally, I was just a couple rows behind Kevin Costner or Barbara Streisand. There was congressmen and senators on the side of me. They're asking me, talking to me, who are you? This and that. And yeah, it put me in an amazing place.
Well, John, and here's the best part about all that. So that's amazing. Thanks for ruminating on that and recalling that. There will be times. So again, you deposit that social capital, the effort to build social capital. And then there will be times, this sounds like one of them, where like you didn't really need to withdraw. It was withdrawn for you because your social capital was so strong. That friendship, that relationship, that rapport, that respect was so strong that it was just done. And this is happening in my life too, as I, enter my 30s, where it's like, it just feels like it's a movie, right? It's like that had to feel like a movie, man. I mean, you're sitting behind.
It was amazing. I mean, it was
literally a movie, like Streisand, Costner, and God only knows however many others, right? The one thing I wanted to say too, that might help folks, might empower, I should use the word empower, not help, but empower folks to, again, break into this networking world, is that we're just people, right? Bill Clinton, Costner, you, me, whoever, we're all just people. We all have the same emotions, the same feelings, the same, struggles, but also the same, excitements. And, when you go in there and like, how many times have I been rubbing elbows with, some of the big timers, right? The movers and shakers, and you just approach it with, they're just a person. And oftentimes they're going to be grateful that you did that because they're so sick of the, oh my gosh, you're, for me, yeah, Valentino Dixon, we've talked about Valentino. He's a world-renowned artist, 27-year honoree. He's become a very good friend. And people will see him and they'll come up. And for me, he's just a dude. He's just an incredible man. He's doing great work, but he's just a person. And so that might help people when they see like, some CEO or some whoever that it's just a person. Let's go have a human conversation.
You bring up a very good point. I have many people ask me for many years, listen, how you meet these people, big titles and the rest, or positions, how do you deal with this? And I always say, listen, give them the respect of their position, one, but connect with them human being to human being. That's really the master key. If you can do that, it doesn't matter. Like you said, so many people are into this. Oh, they go through this whole thing and they're making a
signature, a photo.
Yeah, absolutely. And after a while, it's, they get tired of it. If you can connect as a real person and don't speak like we were talking biz babble, but come out with some content, that's your connection point.
Right.
That's your connection point.
Right on. Let's summarize and close, as we say, close the loop. What do you want to summarize up here? Again, we're talking how to do general networking, what it is, how to be great at it, how to be better at it, how to network a room, and then how to build and first define social capital, what it is and how to build it. How do you want to close the loop here, my friend?
Well, what I want to close it is, remember, just get out there and start to practice that face-to-face networking. The more you practice, the better you get. Follow some of the general guidelines we've given you and just keep building. And over time, you're going to have an incredible network. When it comes to social capital, I think the message I want to leave is too many people want to see their money. Okay. They're too short term. Social capital is about the long game. And there's so much social capital. Every day I go out and I see so much. Every human being that walks by me has social capital there. Start seeing things in deeper dimensions where that social capital can move mountains, but you have to understand how to build it and you have to value it. All right. Too many people want the short term. If it isn't going to pay me my dollars now, I don't want to deal with it. And that's not going to get you in the long term. It doesn't get you anywhere, because social capital, if you really understand how to accumulate it and work it, will put you in many places. When we were talking about that inauguration, I couldn't have bought financially. You can't pay for a package like that. All right. It doesn't work that way.
It has to happen authentically.
It has to happen. And that was the social capital that made it happen.
That's so good. Oh my gosh. You just inspire me, John, in real time. I've been iterating on LinkedIn. I've kind of on a hiatus from it, from like actively engaging on the platform other than fine tuning it. Mm-hmm. I don't need to get into why. We could talk about that in one of our mentee sessions, but I just thought of a new tagline, right? And I think I have it as social capital cultivator connector, just very version one. Because do you know Jessica Edwards or know that name?
Yes, I know Jessica Edwards. I worked with her.
Yeah.
at
So
one time.
okay. So I should have known this. I asked that, but you just reminded me. She knows you well. We've talked about you. I was just on a call with her on Friday with a couple other mutuals, business related, and she talked about her next chapter is really getting focused on, and not that she's leaving where she's at, but like her focus at like a profound kind of conceptual, but also applied level is the social capital, that topic. And she said that Friday, and it made me think of you in our talk today. And now it's full circle, talking about closing the loop. And so, I mean, that's just fantastic. So, okay, we don't need to go through this because we've done it in the last two, but where to find you, how to connect, I'll put it in the show notes for our listeners, watchers. But I'm going to do something differently. This is where we'll actually adjourn is, John, this is how we wrap up our part 3, 3 of 3 series, and we'll have more to come, I'm sure. But what keeps you going, right? So my favorite thing to say is, keep going, right? Keep going, whatever it is you're working on, you're struggling through
What's the jet fuel in my tank? What keeps me moving? I love to do what I do. And here's the thing that I honestly know. It's what I came to this world to do. Okay. That's why I'm in this world. All right. That's why I came here to do what I do. And that's what keeps me going. This is my game. This is what I love. This is what I'll always be doing until the time where I can't do it anymore.
Are you obsessed, John? Are you obsessed about this stuff, the things that you
do?
I
am, because what I realize is for what we're doing, if we can teach people to connect and force multiply, anything is possible. Anything is possible. Most people don't know the power that they possess. And we want to teach them how that they do. You have that power to force multiply, work with people to achieve whatever your strategic objectives are. If you think in your mind that you are alone and you do not have power, then you've taken all the power away from you. If you understand the principles of connecting with people and force multiplying, anything is possible. Anything.
Wow. What a way to finish and conclude here at the not top of the hour, but the top of the hour. Thank you, John. Thank you for
pleasure, my friend.
Your
always
time.
Great. Always great to work with you, Johnny Osmosis. It's always a pleasure. You take care, and all your viewers take care as well, your followers. Bye-bye.
Right, and thank you, John. I gotta say bye to Vidwheel, or thank you to Vidwheel Creator Network. As always, my routine of support with the podcast, the video, the editing, everything. And in closing, John, thanks again for sharing your time, your talent, and your treasure. We'll see you on the next segment. Everyone keep going.
Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.